Okay, so the third talk in this session will be Morphological Recomposition in Tagalog, support for a two-stage model. So this has already been advertised a little bit. The authors are Kenneth, Cayado, Samantha, Wray, and Linnaea, Stockall, and I believe Dave will be delivering the talk.
I'm trying to see if I can read from here. I forgot my glasses in London. Yeah. Hi everyone. I'm Kenneth Cayado. I go by Dave. I'm currently a PhD student at Queen Mary University of London. My research investigates the neural and psychological basis of morphological processing in Tagalog. And today I'll talk to you about a study I did with Samantha Wray from Dartmouth and Linnaea Stockall from Queen Mary, titled Morphological Recomposition in Tagalog, Support for a Two-Stage Model. So this is part of the same Savant project as the previous talk. And as mentioned earlier, there are now a couple of studies that support the composition, the licensing and composition stages in morphological processing. There are now evidence from Greek, English, and Slovenian suffixes and prefixes, and they all found that pseudo-words with category violation were rejected more quickly and more reliably than pseudo-words with semantic violation. So this supports that the licensing stage precedes the composition stage. However, it needs to be noted that Greek, English, and Slovenian share an Indo-European language origin, so we don't know yet whether licensing and composition stages would also happen in languages outside of the Indo-European language family. And moreover, previous studies only looked at derivational affixes, so we don't know yet whether inflectional morphemes would go through the same licensing and composition stages. So in this study, we investigated whether the same post-decomposition stages will be observed for inflectional prefixes in Tagalog, which is an Austronesian language that's highly under-investigated in the existing literature in both psycho and neurolinguistics. Yeah, so as mentioned earlier, this is part of the Savant project. We're looking at Slovenian, BCS, Bangla, as well as Arabic. We're still analyzing the data for that. And for this study, we're focusing on Tagalog inflectional morphemes. Particularly, we're looking at the na and nag prefixes, which mark agent voice. So they both grammatically attach to verbal stems. For example, nalusaw, melted, and nag-ahit, shaved. Both na and nag are incompatible with unambiguously nominal stems. So for example, if we attach na to a noun like pusa, meaning cat, it will form the pseudo word with category violation, na pusa. In the same way, if we attach nag to a nominal stem like bintana, meaning window, it will form the pseudo word with category violation, nagbintana. Critically, na prohibits an external argument and attaches to an accusative and transitive verbs like nalusaw. This is incompatible with purely unergative verbs like luksa or mourn. So if we attach na to luksa, it will form the pseudo word with argument structure violation, naluksa. In contrast, nag attaches to, requires an external argument and attaches to unergative and transitive verbs. It is therefore incompatible with purely unaccusative verbs like rot or bulok in Tagalog. So if we attach nag to bulok, it will form the pseudo word with argument structure violation, nagbulok. So we plan to harness these prefix attachment rule restriction to look at licensing and composition stages in Tagalog. As compared to the previous talk, I'm looking at arguably in a more syntactic, I'm operationalizing the composition stage in a more syntactic domain, arguably in a more syntactic domain, and I'm looking at inflectional morphemes. So our main aim is to replicate previous findings with inflectional morphology in Tagalog, with our main question being, will there be significant differences in accuracy and reaction time for syntactic category violation and argument structure violation for Tagalog inflectional prefixes? Yeah, so we did a lexical decision task with a 2x3 design, and we have two prefixes, nag and na, and we have three critical conditions, namely argument structure violation condition in dark blue, arg struct viol for short. I know it's not that short. And then we have category violation, cat viol for short, which is in beige gold color, and we have grammatical condition in a light blue, greenish color. Yeah, so we formed cat vial items by attaching both nag and nat to unambiguously nominal stems like napusa, nagbintana. Then we formed argument structure violation items by attaching na to an ergative stems and then nag to unaccusative stems. So for the norming task, for cat vial items, we asked three native Tagalog speaking linguists to judge the nominal stems the list of nominal stems that we have to make sure that they are not used in any other like syntactic category. And then we also check the corpora for that. Then for argstruct vial items, we normed them using Kaufman's 1995 past participle test of unaccusativity. Yeah, so for one of the main features of this study is that we conducted the same experiment in two completely different settings. So first, we did the experiment online with primarily UK-based participants. Then we replicated the experiment in a laboratory setting with primarily Abu Dhabi-based participants. So the reason we did this is because we wanted to ensure that the results we get will be robust across different participant types in terms of Tagalog speakers, as well as data collection methods. Yeah, we have a total of 59 native Tagalog speakers. 37 of them were online participants. So they did the experiment in Gorilla SC and they were recruited via Prolific. Then we have 22 lab participants. They were recruited in NYU Abu Dhabi. And they did the experiment with concurrent magnetoencephalography recording. They were inside the magnetically shielded room when doing the experiment. And yeah, they were recruited inside NYU. We have a total of 120 pseudo words and 120 real Tagalog words. 60 cat vial items, 34 na, 34 nag, 60 argstruct vial items, 34 na, 34 nag. Then we have 60 grammatical items, 34 na, 34 nag as well. Then we have 60 filler items, which are also real Tagalog prefix words. Particularly, we have 30 mang prefix words like mamundok, meaning go to the mountains. And we have 30 pang prefix words, meaning 30 pang prefix words like pamalo, which is a thing that you use to slap or hit someone. Yeah, and then, yeah. This is what a sample trial looked like for both online and lab experiment. So we match every element. So the fixation cross was 300 milliseconds for both online and lab. Then we presented the stimulus like naglaba. Then Tagalog speakers have to decide whether this is a real Tagalog word or not by pressing the arrow key for the online participant and one of the buttons in the response box for the lab participants. And the mapping for yes and no responses were balanced across participants. Then the stimulus was replaced by a blank screen for 300 to 500 milliseconds. This serves as an interstimulus interval. For the data cleaning, so we decided to remove participants with accuracy lower than 75% for the filler trials. Then we followed Bayern and Millen's procedure to clean the reaction time data. Because of the criteria, we had to remove 12 online participants and 2 lab participants. For the statistical model, we use linear mixed model for RT and generalized linear mixed model for accuracy. We have 2 fixed factors, condition with 3 levels, and then the prefix with 2 levels. Then we used log likelihood ratio test for significance testing. Then we corrected for multiple comparisons using the means package in R. So based on the previous findings and if it's true that the licensing stage precedes the composition stage, then we predict to find lower accuracy and longer reaction time for argstruct vial items than cat vial items. For accuracy for online participants, we found significantly higher accuracy for cat vial items than argstruct vial items. So it seems that Tagalog speakers can more reliably reject pseudo words with cat vial violation, the category violation, than argument structure violation. And The same patterns of results were found for the lab version of the experiment, so higher accuracy for cat viol items than argument structure violation items. Regarding reaction time, we found longer reaction time for arg-struct viol items than cat viol items. So it seems that native Tagalog speakers need longer time to reject pseudo words with argument structure violation than category violation. And similar patterns of results were found for lab version of the experiment, but the difference between arg-struct viol condition and category violation was only significant for the na prefix, but not for the nag prefix. I'd like to note that we only had 22 subjects for the lab version of the experiment. Originally 24, but we had to remove 2. Yeah, so it could be the case that this version of the experiment was underpowered. Yeah, so as a recap, we found similar patterns of results for both online and lab experiments, suggesting that the results we get are robust across different Tagalog population types and data collection methods. And if we're trying to push it, maybe our findings suggest that the use of online experiment platform like Gorilla SC and online recruitment platform like Prolific is reliable enough to do psycholinguistic experiment, at least in a simple lexical decision task. Our findings are consistent with previous findings in Slovenian, English, and Greek suffixes, as well as Slovenian prefixes from the previous talk. So this is all evidence that the licensing stage precedes the composition stage. Particularly, it seems that Tagalog speakers process syntactic category information syntactic category information more quickly and more reliably than argument structure information. So this is evidence that the licensing stage, where the subcategorical properties of the morphemes are checked, precedes the composition stage, where the compatibility between affix and stem are evaluated. Yeah, so the current study extended the existing literature in 2 ways. First, we add typological breadth to the existing literature by looking at Tagalog, which is a severely underinvestigated language in psycholinguistics, but there are now a couple of works on Tagalog sentence processing, which is amazing. If you're interested in that, there's Jed Pizarro Guevara from UMass, Rowena Garcia from Max Planck, and Ivan Bondok from University of Toronto doing that work. Yeah, and second, our findings also extend the ontological breadth of the existing literature by looking at inflectional morphemes. So now we have evidence that inflectional morphology also go through licensing and composition stages. For future studies, we're currently analyzing the MEG version of this study. So we're trying to test whether we're going to get the same neural profile in Tagalog. So it seems that licensing stage happens in temporal lobe within 200 to 300 milliseconds of seeing the word. And the composition stage happens in orbitofrontal cortex within, 300 to 500 milliseconds of seeing the word. I cannot see. Yeah, and we also encourage future studies to replicate this experiment and see whether licensing and composition stages would also happen in other understudied languages, because for this project, we're only looking at a few languages like BCS, Slovenian, Arabic, and Bangla. So if you're interested to know whether we're going to get the same findings for Bangla, a little spoiler, it's not quite the same. Visit Schwarnadu's poster on Friday. It's poster 32 in that session, yeah. That's all. Maraming salamat po. Thank you. I'd like to acknowledge my supervisors, Dr. Samantha Wray from Dartmouth and Linnaea Stockall from Queen Mary, as well as my colleagues who have been trying to calm me down because I'm so nervous. Thank you.
Okay, plenty of time for questions from in the room, in Zoom. Oh, very good. Oh, we have excellent. Yes, we'll take your question first, please.
Hello, Julia Schwartz from Cambridge.
Hello.
Thank you for the lovely talk, Dave.
Thank you.
I have a couple of questions. First, I was wondering if you could tell us a bit more about your fillers and why you used, I think they were affixes as well, right?
Yeah, there were
And-
prefixes, yeah.
And then the other question is completely different. I was wondering if you saw any effects of phonotactic transition probabilities between your morpheme boundaries.
What was that? So yeah, we designed this experiment with the purpose of hitting two birds with one stone. So this is actually two experiments in one. So the study that I talked to you about was about the grammatical argument structure and category violation conditions, and the filler trials is a separate study on its own, which is for my dissertation. So the reason why we chose mang and pang prefixes is because it has different allomorphs in Tagalog. So pang can surface as pang, pam and pan, and mang can surface as mang, man, and mam. So basically, and then these prefixes trigger nasal substitution and assimilation in Tagalog, and the filler trials aim to investigate how phonological alternation and morphophonological variability in Tagalog prefixes would affect the M170 response in magnetoencephalography. Yeah, and we're not, so we coded for transitional probability and blurring of the stem in our data, in our data set, yeah, but we haven't analyzed the data, yeah. We're still pre-processing it, and we'll see in the future if it affects the responses.
Thank you.
Volya Kapatinsky, University of Oregon. Actually, very similar question, I guess. I was wondering about the consonant clusters that you're getting with the NOG. You know, because you're getting these consonant clusters at the prefix stem boundary that are probably actually a very good cue to there being a morpheme boundary there in Tagalog, because you wouldn't observe them stem internally, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm wondering if the results that you're getting for, you know, the differences that you're getting between Na and Nog could be due to the fact that the morpheme boundary is so much more obvious with Nog.
Yeah, that's one possible way of, that's one possible explanation of the findings. I agree with that, because there are previous mass priming studies where the morpheme boundary would affect the results of morphological processing. So yeah, that's one possible way of looking at it. And at the same time, when we were designing the experiment, I'm guilty of this, but I was thinking of Manila Tagalog the entire time. So I was not considering other varieties of Tagalog. There is one particular region in the Philippines where they use na more flexibly. So that could have affected the results as well. Yeah. But we did not include any participants from that region.
Hi, Dave Cush, University of Toronto.
Hello.
One Dave to another. Nice talk. I had a question about the unaccusative verbs, and do you have the verbs that you can attach nog to?
Oh, the argument structure, right?
Yeah, the argument structure ones.
Is it this?
Yeah.
This one.
Right. So you have here, you can't attach nog to non-accusative like rot.
Yeah.
So I'm just wondering, in Tagalog, forgive me for not knowing anything about this. In Tagalog, is there a productive alternation between, say, unaccusatives and, say, causatives? Could you have causative, I don't know, or even in something like melt? This is not obviously accusative, but you have cases where you can have melt as an unaccusative or an unergative, and then have a causative version which has an extra morpheme that tells you, hey, this is the transitive version, or are they sort of formally similar? Sorry, I jet lagged.
So I couldn't think of any examples of that on top of my head, and I think in terms of argument structure in Tagalog, or Tagalog in general, it's very under-investigated, experimental, theoretical, in both experimental and theoretical fields. So one of the challenges when we were designing this is to look for a framework of argument structure in Tagalog. And the answer is we don't know.
Okay.
And on top of my head right now, I couldn't think of any examples of that in Tagalog. Yeah.
So if you have the butter melted, right? Maybe that's more. Is there a version of melt, where I say, Dave melted the butter?
We use infixes for that. We don't use these na and nag prefixes. So if I wanted to say, I melted the ice cream, I would say, tinunaw ni Dave ang ice cream. Yeah, so like verb first with infix, and then, yeah.
Okay, right. So there's a very clear morphological distinction here.
Yeah.
Thanks. Great.
Thank you.
Other questions?
I
Excellent.
didn't have a question, but can I add something that has to do with the question that we had before on the morphological boundaries? It's not on Tagalog, but from our BCS and Slovenian data, so we use very similar study designs, and the prefixes are basically the same, but the orthography rules work differently in Slovenian and BCS. So in Slovenian, you have really clear boundaries. So you would have something like, if you add a raz prefix to živeti word, you would have raz živeti. It would be really clear. Whereas in BCS, because of how orthography works, you would you would have just raz živeti. So we had a lot of we gave a lot of thought into, creating the stimuli so that it's clear which prefixes they're reading and that they are not. And still, besides those differences, despite them, we get the same pattern of results. So it looks like, at least for the South Slavic, that the difference cannot be ascribed to this boundaries, the orthography and the boundary rules. Just wanted to add that. Thank you.
Thank you, Boyana.
Oh, there's plenty.
So thank you. It was a wonderful talk and the fastest answer in the Easter of answers. So here I'm gonna push against my own beliefs, right? So I love that you have evidence for 2 stages. I wonder if perhaps a more killer evidence for this will come from more minimal pairs, where you have a noun and a verb that, say, come from the same, the same lemma. Because I wonder, so there's things that you can do with a verb like mourn or rot. You can, in principle, try to coerce them into the kind of verb that you need, and that would take more time, and it will make you more prone to errors in this decision, or more, perhaps some people are really good at coercing things into being on a negative or an accusative kind of thing. So I don't know if it would be possible. Do you think this is a reasonable counter argument for something that otherwise I love? Or, and do you think it would be possible to design an experiment where your nouns and your verbs are very, very similar, except for, say, clear morphological marking that tells you this is a noun? Is it clear?
Yeah, it's clear. That's definitely, I think it's an empirical question that needs to be explored, yes. And I don't think Tagalog is the right language to explore it, because we don't have like minimal pairs for nouns and verbs. I don't think I can. I can't think of any examples with noun and verb being minimal pairs in Tagalog right now. So if I will research more about it to make sure, but I'm pretty positive that Tagalog may not be the language to explore that question.
Thank you, but otherwise I really love this. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Oh, it's not done, sorry.
Well, we have 0 seconds left in the question period, so please join me in thanking our speaker and all our speakers in the lexical processing and Dave's session.
Thank you.